So please join me in welcoming Sandra Gullen.
See why I need her. Simone, we worked together. Well, Simone was my publicist in Toronto for Josephine, all the Josephine books, and she's the best. So good. Okay, I'm going to just get. First of all, you probably wonder what I'm wearing. I want to show you the layers of a 17th century gown. So we begin, I wonder if I can, well, I'll just let this fool. This is a 17th century cloak, such as my heroine, Petite, or Louise de la Valliere, would have worn skulking around the palace in order to meet her lover, the Sun King. And I begin, she would have had long golden locks like this, which I do not. And she would have worn it in ringlets coming down the side, and then the rest would have been in a bun at the back. And she would have always had something covering her head, because that was very important, but not hats. Men only wore hats, except for women when they were doing something that men did, which was riding horses. Then the woman would wear a hat. With one exception, the king's cousin, this rather outrageous woman who might be the subject of my... There we go. My kids and I had a lot of fun with that wig. Now, so I am now in my underwear. This is the chemise, the basic chemise that would be worn under the gown, and it would be what is washed regularly. And this one is silk, and they would have been silk, and the more you had, the richer you were. And others were made of a fabric that wicked really beautifully, and rather like silk. It was warm in the winter and cold in the summer. It was made from a plant that no longer exists. So I think someone should dig up those seeds somewhere. Okay, now I know what you probably are really always wondering about, and it's certainly something that puzzled me for a long time, is where was their purse? So this is the purse. And it goes on first. And there might be a pair, and it's called a hook. So there might be a pair of hooks. And what do we have here but a 17th century tissue? Oh. Next comes a really charming piece of garment called the bum roll. And I really never knew what the purpose of the bum roll was until I started researching this gown, and the purpose of the bum roll is to hide the purse. Because the skirt will go over it. You see? Now, there we go. So I have to do this. The way a skirt went on then was, excuse me, rather different. It tied front to back and back to front, and there was a slit down the side so you could get out to poke. And now Simone is helping me with my 17th century zipper. And then comes, and there would have been several skirts. And the colder it was, the warmer they were. Red flannel was very popular. Okay, last time I did this, I missed the sleeve. So I did the whole interview on stage with one sleeve on. didn't realize it until the end. Anyway, now, here comes the hard part. And Simone, there's nothing you can do but pray. Okay, wait a minute. Hold on, here we go. Oh, there we go. So this was the bodice, and it was basically a corset, but it was worn outside at that time. It was the body. In fact, it could be called bodysuit. And in movies, you always see. Here, I'll walk around a little bit. Thank you. I just did a short film shoot in Toronto, and we were in downtown rush hour with me rushing across the street. And Torontonians don't think anything of it. Not a thing. Except two little girls who were all dressed up. They attached themselves to my train and started carrying. Right at Yonge University, or Bourne University, they were carrying my train across. It was wonderful. So, where was I? The bodice. Oh yes, in movies, women are always bosoming out. Well, this is our fantasy. Because the purpose of the bodice is to flatten you out. In the 17th century, only nursemaids were bosoming. So you didn't want that look. That wasn't considered sexy. So the sexy look was a woman who wasn't really bosoming. So that's the profile, is to be flat. Also, we always assume that this is supposed to be down here. Down over the shoulders, fairly low. That's the style of this period. But during the day, they would cover themselves with a kerchief, and their hair would be covered. They were really rather covered, except for when they had their portraits painted. So this is and for balls. So this is our vision of the 17th century gowns, is that they're always uncovered. Well, that wasn't in fact the case. The portraits gave a false picture. So, and of course they didn't drink water then, because the water wasn't very good, so they'd have to drink wine and beer. And champagne was invented at this period, which may have added to the gaiety of the times. It was very difficult to cork. They went through many explosive experiments. So I'm going to begin at the beginning. I'm going to do a short reading. But before I begin, I just want to say that I fell in love with Louise de la Vallière while I was researching the first of the trilogy. A biography of Louise de la Vallière was very popular in Josephine's time, and I had a scene where this book was on her mantle, and I said, well, I should check into this book because it was popular with everyone at the time. And that's when I became enchanted with Louise's story, whom I call Petite, or who was called Petite by some familiar members. And she fired my imagination in that telltale way that signals that you're going to write a novel about someone, because you just become a little obsessed. And what interested me is that she was said to be timid, and yet she could outride and she could outhunt the king and all his men. So I said, what's wrong with this picture? She was obviously not that timid. She, I would say, was a rider at an Olympic level. So obviously, she was spending a lot of time in the barn. And so she wasn't your typical female of the day by any means. Also, she was extremely devout, very religious young woman, very serious, somewhat intellectual, and yet she became France's official fallen woman, the official mistress of the king. So it was these contradictions in her character that really sparked my curiosity, which